All right, everyone get ready because today we are diving into Dracula.
Oh, Dracula.
But like, not the Dracula you think you know.
Oh.
Yeah, we are checking out this film, The Last Voyage of the Demeter. It came out in 2023, and it's all about like one part of Bram Stoker's novel.
Okay.
And to help us on this journey, we've got this article from CBR,
Oh, cool.
and honestly, the comment section is just
Wild.
yeah, wild. And this film, along with Nosferatu, those two really show how you can take a super famous story and like change it up and still get chills.
Yeah, I mean, you think you know Dracula, but these films show there's still so much to explore. Both of them, even though they came out almost 100 years apart, they both zero in on the part where Dracula sails to England on that ship.
The Demeter, right? That's a huge part of both Stoker's novel and Nosferatu, but
Although a lot of people might not realize Nosferatu was actually like an unofficial adaptation.
oh, really?
Yeah, they got into some serious legal trouble with Bram Stoker's estate back in the day.
Huh. Interesting. I didn't know that. I guess that's why we're diving into this, right? There's all this history we don't know.
Absolutely.
So back to The Last Voyage of the Demeter. You know, this director, Andre Øvredal, he takes this terrifying section of the Dracula story and just goes all in on it.
Yeah.
Plus, they got Corey Hawkins to star in it, which, when you think about it, is interesting casting, considering...
Well, because of how they portray Dracula.
Exactly.
Yeah, forget the charming, sophisticated count you usually see, like Bela Lugosi or Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
This Dracula is a straight-up monster. More bat creature than elegant Transylvanian dude.
Whoa, so you're telling me no charming accent, no hypnotic eyes.
None.
So then the question is, does this, like, taking away the classic Dracula actually make it more scary?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Right. Like, is the monster movie angle better?
I think you could argue that, yeah. By making Dracula just a monster, it shows just how scary he is, just a predator.
So less talking and smooth moves, more fangs and blood.
Exactly.
I kind of love that.
Yeah, and you could even argue that, I mean, everyone knows Dracula's whole deal already, right?
Yeah.
So by showing him as this creature, his actions become even scarier.
Yeah.
There's no way to reason with him.
That makes sense. And reading through those comments, you can see how people feel about this. Some people were all about the atmosphere, the unique take.
Right.
While others, they thought it was predictable, maybe even a bit boring, because we all know what happens to the crew, right?
That is interesting, isn't it? Knowing the ending doesn't always ruin a story, though.
No, for sure.
I mean, look at The Last Voyage of the Demeter. It shows that a familiar story can still scare you. But maybe some people thought it relied too much on what people already knew about Dracula.
That's a really good point. But even if you know the ending, like, the whole historical context of Nosferatu adds another layer to Demeter, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Knowing about Nosferatu's style, the visuals, the fact that it's silent, it makes watching Demeter almost like you're seeing a modern version of a scene that was just hinted at in the original.
Oh, like a conversation between the two films.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk more about showing Dracula as a full-on monster. I want to know what you think about how that choice changes, like the whole vibe and message of the film.
When you think about how they decided to make Dracula a creature in this film,
Yeah.
it really puts all the attention on survival. Like, they're not trying to charm Dracula.
Yeah, they're just trying not to get eaten.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, instead of some charismatic vampire seducing everyone, the crew on the Demeter is just fighting to stay alive.
Yeah, it's way more like a straight-up monster movie than like a vampire romance.
Totally. And being trapped on that ship just makes it even more intense.
Oh, absolutely. The Demeter's basically a floating coffin, right? Like the audience and the crew, everyone feels the walls closing in as Dracula picks them off one by one.
Yeah. And some people in those CBR comments, they said knowing the crew's fate from the start made it, well, predictable.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, do you think that ruins it, though?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
But I think even if you know the ending, the journey there can still grab you.
Yeah, it's not really about who lives or dies, right? It's like the whole point is that feeling of dread, the fear of what's hiding in the dark.
And the way Demeter builds that atmosphere is so effective.
Oh, totally. There's just something so primal about being afraid of what you can't see.
It's like it reminds us that the things we don't understand, those are the things that really scare us.
Yeah, like this Dracula. No idea what he's thinking. He's just a predator.
Exactly. He's not so much a character as like this force of nature.
It's so different from all those other vampire movies these days that are all romantic or action-y.
Yeah, it's definitely a change of pace. It's like they wanted to strip away all the stuff we're used to and just show the most basic, scary parts of Dracula.
And it works. So I was looking through the comments, and some people were talking about the CGI for Dracula. Like,
Yeah.
some people hated it, others thought practical effects would have been even worse.
That's the classic creature feature debate.
It-
Like, do you want it to look real or do you want it to feel real?
Yeah, because sometimes, even if it looks kind of fake, the tangible, practical effects are creepier.
Right. But in this case, I think they mix the CGI and practical effects well.
Yeah. And the result is definitely creepy. This Dracula is a total nightmare creature.
Oh, for sure. And you can't forget about the sound.
Oh my gosh, the sound is
The
amazing.
creaking ship, the wind, people screaming.
Yeah, it's like you're right there with them.
It's really well done. Like,
Mm.
they use those sounds to make you feel trapped.
I totally felt trapped. But okay, so the film got some mixed reviews, and I don't think a lot of people saw it.
That's too bad.
Yeah. So what do you think? Why didn't it make a bigger splash?
Well, maybe, like we were saying before, the marketing didn't do a good job showing how unique the film is.
Yeah, true. The Last Voyage of the Demeter, that's not exactly a catchy vampire title.
Right. If they wanted to hook people, maybe they should gone with something a little more, intense.
Yeah, maybe a little less subtle.
Especially because there are so many vampire movies out there already.
And you know what else?
What's that?
They released it in August.
Oh, yeah. That's not going to work.
I know. It's like, why not release it closer to Halloween?
It's a shame because, the whole vibe of the film is perfect for Halloween.
Totally. But even if it wasn't a huge blockbuster, The Last Voyage of the Demeter shows us that you can still tell a familiar story in a new and terrifying way.
Absolutely. It proves that even old stories have hidden depths waiting to be found. And sometimes the smaller, more focused stories, those are the ones that really stick with you.
Well said, and that is the perfect way to head into the final part of our deep dive. We've talked about the monster, the suspense, the ship, but now it's time to talk about the film's connection to Nosferatu.
And, it's more than just both films being about the Demeter part of the story. Like,
Yeah.
when you watch The Last Voyage of the Demeter, it makes watching Nosferatu even better.
Oh, really? How so?
It's like you get to see what might have been happening in that silent film, behind the scenes or under the surface.
That's a great way to put it because Nosferatu is silent.
Right.
So much of it is about the visuals and the mood. Yeah.
But then Demeter comes along with dialogue and sound and special effects,
Yeah.
and you experience that same story, but in a completely new way.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And if you've seen Nosferatu, you know how striking it is, how eerie the silence is, and Demeter almost feels like a modern version of it, like someone took those silent, shadowy images and made them real,
Yeah, like they gave him a voice.
Exactly.
It's amazing how they can adapt and reinterpret a story.
It is.
I mean, Dracula is over 100 years old, but they're still finding ways to make it scary and new.
That's what's so cool about Dracula. He just keeps coming back.
It is.
He's a shapeshifter. Literally and figuratively, like he represents all those fears we have about death, about the things that hide in the dark.
Yeah, he's like the ultimate outsider, the guy who represents everything that could destroy our world. No wonder we can't stop thinking about him, trying to figure him out.
Exactly. Every generation sees him in a new way, puts their own fears onto him. Nosferatu was all about the fear after World War I, and Demeter's about our love for monster movies.
That's true. So, where do you think Dracula goes from here? Are we going to see more of these smaller stories, or will it go back to those huge blockbusters?
Well, I think there's room for both.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, the new Nosferatu did really well, and that proves people still want those classic monster stories.
Yeah.
But I think people are also ready to see what's underneath, the psychology of it all.
Ooh, that'd be cool. Maybe a Dracula story from one of his brides or something.
Yeah. Or a film about what it means to live forever, the good and the bad.
Wow, the possibilities are endless.
And that's why Dracula is so interesting. He's like this blank page where we can put all our fears and dreams, all our fascination with the dark stuff we don't understand.
I love that. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Hopefully, you guys have a new appreciation for this story, and maybe even some ideas for future Dracula adaptations.
Maybe you'll even revisit some of those classic films or find some new ones that really push the boundaries of the vampire genre, because that's the beauty of Dracula. He can be told in so many ways, and each one tells us something about ourselves and the world we live in.